I've decided to go ahead and maybe in 3 parts, 2 parts, 100 parts, break down this process of going into the shadow, the darkness, to the ego, to the yin, because the yin is the black, the masculine, or the dark, and the yang is, well, I'm not going to say that the yin is the dark, but it's that the black side and the yang is the white side. So going into the shadow side, fully confident that you can do this in order to gain perspective on the shadow and the light. And I've decided that maybe a couple parts on explaining this more fully in a few different videos will be helpful for anybody who's interested in raising their awareness through the alchemical process of combining a mixture of the light and the dark in a wise way, meaning understanding some of the tricks, techniques, some of the tools, and some of the mind force, the mind power that would be needed to practice this in such a way that you could cultivate and draw from it the best possible results, which in turn help you become the magician that this whole world needs, that we all need, that we need as a whole world and as a one self-consciousness, one consciousness of many people who are pretty fed up with the spiral of negative energies leading and controlling us toward a dark agenda, which feels very unbalanced. I've got notes, and so this is going to look a little bit more rough. Now, the first thing I thought of, which is perfectly in sync and time, is that good old movie or book, however you saw it, or fable if somebody told it to you, of it's called A Christmas Carol, which is more generally and widespread known as the story of Scrooge and how he became sort of enlightened on his bullshit. Scrooge was this very successful, worldly successful man. He was, through his detachment, he was able to make a very good living for himself and therefore support not only himself but a few of his family members. However, despite his worldly, earthly success and support in a very, in the overall spectrum, unsupportive way of family members, he was not helping himself through that success or anybody else. He was, in fact, causing a lot of frustrated stagnancy, meaning, say he was able to give I think it was his nephew a job at his, I forget, I'm not going to remember all the details, but I don't know, it was some kind of, they were writing, I remember feather pens, but at his business, he was able to give his nephew a job. However, he was very strict and intolerant and not considerate that his nephew was his family even, let alone his other workers, and treated them like a CEO these days in some corporate company. Not all, but in some a CEO of some corporate company, a CEO of Wall Street would treat like the public after fucking off all their money and then allowing us to foot the bill. That's kind of how he treated his people. He made them work late hours and holidays and demanded more and more of them and gave not much more than just the assurance that they would continue to have a job if they were abiding by his strict rules. Now, this was a time of a lot of suffering for people during, I don't know, this was 1800 something? Yeah, I think so. 17? I don't know. But, you know, back in the feather quill days, where people, you know, they were probably going through some kind of recession or some bullshit like people who live in the United States are, where little by little, you know, housing costs go up, food prices go up, wages either stay still or you lose your job and there are not many jobs to be found, or, you know, you're not being helped out by your government or people that should be helping you because you're a hard-working motherfucker and you know, you're working harder than you did 10, 20 years ago and making less and la-di-da. So that's kind of the air of how things were going in the times of Scrooge and his nephew. Well, Scrooge got lucky. He got lucky in the sense that he had almost like an angelic intervention. And I want to say that's awesome, but this is a fable. This is a story. So when it comes to reality, this fable or story is actually applicable because it's also, from the mind who created it, a metaphor. And it's a perfect metaphor for somebody who maybe has a midlife crisis, or somebody going through their Saturn return, which is what I am coming off of. Yeah, I'm out of it now. It rocked my boat, and it rocked my boat in a way that the ghosts of the Christmas rocked Scrooge's boat because of his ignorant lack of compassion. So this is something we actually all can participate in, is our own beckoning of our angels of the Christmas past, present, and future to help us learn. And the angels are there to help us. And one of the ways for us to learn is to actually map out a plan on how we are going to allow ourselves to go into darker and harder spaces in order to burn out the arrogance and the things that don't work for us, that are causing us to be skeptical and afraid. And, you know, you saw how I was talking about the country and the government and the CEOs. Well, that was coming from a fear place. And I did that on purpose for you guys to see that these are emotions, you know, I feel them. But I also know that just like the Scrooge angelic ghostly experience where he dreamed, supposedly, right? Where he went into this dreamlike trance where he was floating on his bed and visiting places, floating in the air above them happening with nobody seeing him. Just like that, we are in an earthly experience which, to my understanding and my belief, is very similar to the simulation of the ghost-like experience. It's a simulation. It's a simulated place that produces the perfect, you know, the perfect balance of shit for us as individuals and as a collective consciousness to encounter, enough so that will continually allow us to evolve. And then we pass on from this experience into, I'm not quite sure how many levels or what, but into what I would say that I do believe in is more of a reality and an observance, a place where we can actually maybe observe what has occurred here in the simulated experience to some degrees. So Scrooge was just thrown to the wolves, basically, because and like I said, midlife or Saturn returns, often people need a crisis. In fact, if anybody knows, okay, so often people need a crisis in order for any change to occur. If anybody knows tarot deck, that would be the Tower card. And crises are wonderful things because, in fact, you do not, in many ways, and this can be very painful for many people, but in hindsight, it's quite a blessing because you do not have to initiate the learning experience when there's a Tower experience, because it will just happen if you've ignored the work that you need to do long enough. It is the natural law. In Hermeticism, there are a few laws. I think there's about 7 to be sure of, and I'm not going to list them now, but cause and effect is one, and that really plays into our karma. And what you give is what you get. And this is a natural, universal law. Our perspective of the universe is that as above, so below. What's up there and we see out there happening is going to happen inside of us, our feelings, and also at the molecular structure of us and beyond. And so if we are feeling negative all the time, or we're constantly putting harmful things in our body, we will suffer the effects of a nervous breakdown or a health breakdown. And we see the breakdown of our beautiful planet, simulated or not, through how the collective has either in a power-driven way had the agenda of pushing their will onto treating it, and therefore a lot of us have been pulled into that, but a lot of us also have not taken the initiative enough to do anything about that or the pain that is being caused in a lot of places. But really, when it comes down to it, the only thing you really can do is take care of you. And are you taking care of yourself? Because that will help everything. It's the butterfly effect. So, he needed this Tower situation, Scrooge did, because he's probably got to be the exemplification or the perfect character or archetype of a very stubborn, crotchety person who is stuck in their ways. They're stuck in the mire. Therefore, it is going to take a major force to get him to observe and look at what's going on. Hence, floating on a bed, powerless, watching his past life occur, his present life occur, and what, based on the present that has occurred, will happen in his future. And it was very bleak and very sad, and eventually brought Scrooge to his proverbial knees, because he, from a different perspective, which is what I'm the metaphor for going into the darkness or facing your demons or facing the pain or the things that no longer serve. What that is, metaphorically, it is being able to observe from the painful space how going toward the light actually is something that you want to do, and from the painful space you are much more motivated to go there. Now, Scrooge wasn't allowed any preparation for it, but he didn't need to be prepared because of the nature of his stubborn and very ignorantly arrogant habits. But that's him, and if we are going to do this practice, we must, unless you'd like to have a Tower experience, and I guarantee I've had them, and in hindsight, I am glad. But if I could push a button, if somebody said, "Well, here, let's see, you want to quantum leap into this space of enlightenment, and I can push a button and it'll happen," but you know it's going to be a very devastating and destructive thing that you're going to have to experience, I'd say, no, let me take my time and prepare for it. I'd rather do it that way, because I know I could quantum leap, but I'm okay with, like, you know, walking or crawling and not sprinting. Sprinting is very difficult to do. It makes me feel like I'm dying. I did that in high school, and I hated it. So, techniques. Yes. So in order to avoid the total destruction or having to burn, as in that level of hurting, to be able to be humble enough to change our thinking and our ways, if we don't want to do it that way, we need to develop techniques. The first word that anybody needs to think of and become associated with in general is awareness. Awareness. That's your first ritual. Your first ritual is to become aware of yourself. You need to become aware of yourself. And I'm breaking this down starting with the physical. When you begin to learn how to meditate, I will tell you that a good practice and technique is to become aware of different parts of your body as you are you get in a focused kind of place where you can focus. You don't want to be where there's too many distractions at first, because you're just learning. Get in a place that you are able to focus in, so perhaps a very quiet space. You can lay down, whatever, just some place where you can focus. And closing one's eyes is very effective because you are not distracted by what you see. However, it is not necessary, but it's effective. And you could go through your body and start with your toes to your calves, and moving onward up to your knees, to your thighs. And while you are moving through your body, you say in your head or out loud or whatever, I can feel my toes. Okay, I can feel my thighs. Yes, I can feel my thighs. You could wiggle them or whatever if you want, but you're not going to want to, it's a little distracting to try and move your body, so try and be still. And become aware of as many parts of your body as you can. In fact, recently I tried to become aware of my pineal gland, which is supposedly located right in the center middle of your brain. And you know, I'm not going to say I can claim anything, but it was a very weird thing to try and become aware of, because I visualized the shape of it and what it looked like from what I've seen. And it made me feel very itchy and tickly, not bad, but it was very strange to try and orb around that in my thinking. And as we all know, the universe is mental, all is mind, so the thinking part is the most important part. Now, once you've actually gotten used to, it could take you one time, and maybe if you were so distracted, maybe try it a few times to become aware. Like if you couldn't figure out, I just can't feel my elbow. It's not really about feeling it like pinch. It's about being aware of where it is. And if you feel like maybe you got interrupted by not caring what you were doing, or just like trying to fast go through it, I suggest doing it multiple times. But from there, then regular meditation in one way or another, they call it meditation. You can just call it being aware of your body and then your mind and your thoughts. You kind of want to be able to master a general acceptance of your physical body and a general acceptance of your mental state. Accepting how you feel about yourself physically, but then whatever makes you feel uncomfortable when you start to feel in your body, and I don't necessarily mean physically uncomfortable. I mean more like emotionally uncomfortable, like insecure. Maybe you feel like, oh, I don't like you need to try and let go of that in order to keep moving through the process of becoming aware of your body and allowing the thoughts you have and things about your body and then about, existentially yourself to not govern your acceptance or your love for yourself, and try and develop a confidence there. There's other techniques. If you want to jump really into it, you can go maybe join like a poetry slam or something if you're afraid of public speaking, or go submit, a resume or something to, let's just go on the poetry tangent. Let's say just submit some poetry to a bunch of publications and do it in the most confident, and I don't mean arrogant or pretentious. I mean, coming from a confident, like, okay, this is me, and this is, pick some of the poems that you like and submit them to publishers, and don't worry about whether or not you're going to be published. Just that act is an act of empowerment, especially when you're doing it from an authentic space and you are doing it from a space that you enjoy, because I guarantee if you enjoy something about yourself, somebody or a million somewhere out there, because there's lots of people out there, and it could be, I would say more like at least 1 million people are going to like exactly you the way that you do, maybe from a different perspective, but it's just the way that energy in this universe works with each other. It balances out, and some people you don't like and you're not attracted to, and that's okay. All right, so I'm going to finish this up with this. I'm on card 2 of 12, so I might not finish them all tonight, but I'll finish this one up, card 2. So you want to prepare yourself to be, I feel like awareness really is feeding into your confidence, and your confidence is an okayness and a stillness and a peace with yourself as you are in this universe, and that is the most powerful mind space you can be in ever, because not only do you love yourself, if you love yourself that much, it will be very easy to love others and accept all different types of scenarios, good or bad. So if you can get to that place to any degree that is okay by you, you're like, I'm okay with that level for now, then you're doing fucking awesome. And that would lead us into what the most essential basic thing that you would need to go into the dark space, which would be to prepare to psychically protect yourself. Because when you're going into the dark, or when Scrooge had the angels as protection, they weren't going to let him fall off the bed or, accidentally bleep into that portal and just leave him there like a second Scrooge, like weird as fuck forever and ever, That's not, happening. So, and it's not like that's going to happen to you when you go into dark spaces, but one thing that can happen is that you can have a moment of doubt or a long pause of doubt and really second guess what you're doing and second guess yourself and become very self-conscious of yourself to the point of that you feel insecure. And when you're insecure, you are super open for psychic attack. And I don't mean like other people necessarily would psychically attack you, but you would first be psychically attacking yourself. And therefore, because of the magnetism and the law of attraction, if you're in a dark space, all the dark energies, which are not other people's faults often, but can be, are going to, like a magnet, start to attract to that similar vibration. And therefore, you will be much easily led down the path of darkness by the path of darkness's hand, and you don't want that to happen because you want to be in control of this experience. You want to be both Scrooge and the 3 ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future. And the last thing, let's see if I want to end right here, or just say this last thing. This last thing, so that leads into, after you've learned how to Jedi mind trick yourself, these droids, or how does it go? These are not the droids you're looking for. Move along. Like, that's the kind of power and confidence you want to possess. So when the dark comes in and says, hey, how's it going? You say, this is not the dark being you're looking for. Move along. And dark will not pass your body, because light is more powerful than dark, in that darkness cannot enter light, but lightness can enter dark. Okay? So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to fold this in half, because next video I'm going to start out with mapping out, meaning maybe listing in a note in your notes your start to finish of how you're going to enter and what you're going to allow and how you're going to exit. And this is important, not for total control purpose, but because you need to have it in your mind, especially people who don't do spontaneity and have a little bit more difficulty with new situations. It's very good for people like that to analytically like deconstruct what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and how they're going to get out, so that it is mapped in their brain. And if it's mapped in your brain, and you can rely on your trust to remember that that's what's going to happen, and you can do this process a lot smoother. Thank you for watching. Much love. That was part 1, by the way.